Welcome in, Raider Nation, to a Manic Monday version of the W2W review. My name is Jason Smith, also known as The Knight, and let's go ahead and let's get started. It's been a Manic Monday for me, trying out some new equipment, which has gone, in my opinion, seamlessly well. Just powering off a new system, different mic setup. I could hear it. It's, to me, in my ear right now, it sounds excellent. Maybe a little high, hopefully not too high. Let me try to lower it down just a tad. Yeah, so it's okay. So let me just kind of catch you guys up. We'll start with some house cleaning today. So my whole life dynamic has changed for those who have been following around for a while, even though I've been absent for 2.5 years. And again, I just want to appreciate everybody who's stayed connected and has been watching the videos, even though they haven't been the greatest. They haven't been my best, that's for sure. And that's why I'm doing this. And we'll get into that in just a second. But man, so as most of you guys must know, I was a single father of one beautiful little girl. And now I'm married in and I'm a father of 5 children. And that's really changed the dynamic. Some of you may know my wife fell ill about a year and 3 months ago, and we're still going through it. We actually have an appointment tomorrow to figure out what the next step is and when that'll be. So, yeah, it's been an adjustment for me, nevertheless. Being visually impaired and having, when going from basically being the needy one to being the one that provides it all, and it's been an amazing experience for me, to say the least. It gives me an opportunity to grow, and that's what I'm all about. I love to inspire people and I love to be inspired. So the fact that I find myself in this situation excites me more than anything else. So I'm really excited about all that. But just kind of fill you in on what my mornings are like, right? So so I get up, and the first thing I like to do is make myself, I'm the first one up, so I like to make myself a cup of coffee. And here's where my problem lies is I love to sleep. So obviously I give myself enough time to make the cup of coffee, but I don't give myself enough time to enjoy the cup of coffee. So I end up making a cup of coffee and going right into my daily routine, which is waking up 3 girls and trying to get them going, and then going and waking up my stepson who has autism, which is always a challenge in itself. So I got to make sure that they're up and going. And the good part is they maintain themselves. They get ready themselves. They know the routine, and that helps out a lot. But my other stepdaughter is fully disabled. She's in a wheelchair. She don't speak. She don't walk. I mean, I literally have to do everything for her. So I have to get that started. I got to feed her through a tube and everything. So as I'm getting her ready, I got to make sure that I'm using my voice and making sure that everybody's on task. Then I get her to a certain point, and then I go out and I got to get my stepson on the bus that picks him up front. And then I get him off, and then I come back in. I finish dialing the girls. I got to walk them to the bus stop. I get them going. Then I got to come back and I check on the wife, right? And I get that going. And then I go right back. Meanwhile, I'm trying to drink my coffee, mind you. Okay. Then I have to go and finish getting ready my other stepdaughter before her bus shows up. So this morning, everything's on track. Everything's going fairly well. And then I finally get her in her wheelchair. The bus shows up. I go out. Now, with her, she has to have a rider that rides with her on the bus. She can't just get on the bus by herself. And I noticed the rider's not there. And I'm like, okay, sometimes she's late. So me and the bus driver out there, we're talking, we're chopping it up. Time goes by. I called the school. Apparently she called in sick, but didn't call in her replacement rider. So now I'm way off track, right? Now I gotta go make sure the wife's okay again. She still drives and stuff. She's at a good place right now. So then I have to take my daughter out of the wheelchair, get her in the car, break down the wheelchair. We drive her to school. So now we're already late getting to the church. So now I'm like, okay, I want to do this video. I want to practice and keep honing in my skill, which is trying to figure out all this equipment, figuring out I got so much I'm trying to work on, and we're going to get into more of that here in a second. I'm just working on the conversation pieces that I want to do here too. I literally guys want to really turn this into a radio broadcast. I want to capture the audio and turn it into a podcast. But I want it to be basically live radio. That's why you don't see the video on the screen. I want this to be a place where you just like, it's like listening to a radio show. And things are really, really coming together on that end. I have an IT guy that I've been working with. We spent probably a good 3 to 4 hours together on Saturday, going through all the equipment, going through all the plugins. And it's really, I'm really excited about where this is going. There's a few more pieces that I'm waiting on to really get this thing started. And once I get all those pieces rolling and get those pieces together, that's when, I'll really probably start the format of what I want to do as far as a podcast / broadcast radio show. And that's coming real soon. And I'll probably do some pilot episodes. Basically, I'll probably run, I don't even know a number off the top of my head, but I really want to hone it in. So it'll definitely be broadcasted here. But before I start turning it into a podcast form and putting it up like on iTunes and Spotify and all those other places, I want to make sure that it's high quality. Which I know kind of doesn't make a difference if I'm going to have it here on YouTube, but YouTube's a home. I know that the people that watch have been watching for a while, and I have faith in all you. And on that note, another big shout out to Watts Raider. I watched your video, bro, and you really showed a lot of love, and I really appreciate that. Simone Raider, thank you for chiming in down below, bro. And yeah, dude, we'll work on getting to the point where I could have you on for sure, dude, because I miss that. I miss interacting with people. I want to have guests on the show, the whole nine. So definitely be in contact with you, Simone Raider. Also, as we move forward, there was a comment by an old listener named Lee Coco, I think is what it says on there. And he asked me, how do I get my insight? How do I come up with my insight, being visually impaired? And I've gone over it before. I do a lot of voiceover audio, listening to different articles. When I watch film, it's funny, when I watch film, I used to start off by watching it on my 65-inch TV because, at the time I really felt that bigger is better. And when I watch the games, it is better for me to watch it on the 65, even though I got to stand right in front of it. I still like watching it on the 65. But when I'm trying to follow a player or watch a little certain part of a film, I like going smaller. I mean, I go as low as 13 inches, it's a little too hard for me, but I kind of found my happy spot being around 32 to 42 inch TVs because it narrows my view of vision down a little bit. And I just got to get right on it, man. And it's a little bit more work probably than the average person, but that's one of the whole points that I'm back. And I want to make that clear, man, is when I left, if you go back to the archives and find the video where I said, peace out, I was on a mission and I completed that mission for the most part. I mean, I'm not done with the mission yet, but I'm at a point now in that mission where I've grown so much as a visually impaired individual that it's time for me to continue to advocate and really put it out there. That doesn't matter if you have a disability and there's something you want to do, you could find a way to do it. And that's what I'm doing. This is what I love to do. And I'm going to continue to do it. And I'm going to do it from the perspective of being visually impaired and let everybody know that I'm visually impaired and that this is a possible dream for anybody. I'm currently, once my wife gets better, I'm currently re-rolling into college and getting my degree in communications because I want to do radio, whether I build my own brand or someone is willing to take a shot on someone who's visually impaired. This is what I enjoy to do. So, Lee, I hope that answers your question a little bit. I've been following the Raiders my whole life. I love football. That's part of it. It's kind of easy to gather insight and gather information of someone you've always follow anyway. The players. And then after that, you just kind of, really just come up with your own opinion, really try to think outside the box. And that's truly, truly what I really try to do is think outside the box and try to put myself in their shoes and not really take my opinion just from my own fan base perspective. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. I wanted to change the pace a little bit. I wanted to talk about the 2018 season up until now. I wasn't around last year. My voice was not heard. Not that it matters. It's just, I still feel like I have a lot to say on what happened, what transpired last year, and why we find ourselves in the situation we are now. And there's a lot of great podcasts out there. I listen to a lot of great people. And I've heard some interesting stuff, and that's what kind of inspired me to kind of make this video and get my point of view out there. And that is John Gruden had a plan, and Reggie McKenzie and John, I think they got along. I don't want to say they didn't get along. It's just their view on how this was going to work and how this was going to transpire. I don't believe they were on the same page, especially when it came to Khalil Mack. And we're never going to get the bottom line truth of what happened, how it happened, etc. But from what I could gather up myself and create my own opinion on was the fact that I think John Gruden wanted Khalil Mack. Who wouldn't want Khalil Mack? But I believe that he was like only at a certain price. Like what we would have had to pay Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper both, we would have found ourselves in a real financial pinch. And that goes credit to Reggie McKenzie, right? I mean, he drafted those players, and I've gotten into it with many people of, well, these players fell to him, yada yada yada. That's the case in all drafts. Players fall to you. You just the fact that we were horrible the year before helped, right? Because you get to pick, when you're picking 4 and 5 back to back, and you get players, and he did a good job of taking a chance on Derick Carr, and we'll get into that in a minute too. And then we got Gabe Jackson that year. The following year, we were able to pick up Amari Cooper, and look, I had to start with Khalil Mack because I want to kind of go in order. When comes September, when it really started, we need to put the pen to paper, and Khalil wouldn't budge, and his agent had a lot to do with that. John just made a decision, and I think the fact that Mark Davis is a strong believer in John Gruden and what he brings to the team, he's going to go with so regardless if Mark Davis takes the bullet on this one, it was a John Gruden decision. Now, I think the biggest thing that we take from this is I don't believe that John Gruden believed that it would be that big of a deal, but I don't think he took in consideration that Khalil Mack was pretty much the heart and soul of this team at that time. Like, he was the best player on the team. Like, Derick Carr is the leader on this football team, and he's well respected for his religious beliefs and how he carries himself as an individual. It's one of the biggest reasons why I'm one of his biggest supporters, no doubt. But from a playmaking standpoint and just the intensity of this football team, it started with Khalil Mack and his play. He wasn't the most outspoken guy. He didn't bring the energy in the locker room and outside of the locker room as much as I would have liked to see. But when he hit the field and he made those plays, come on, we all know we love some Mac, right? So, he got excited when he made sacks and he did his dance. But outside of that, he was a fairly quiet guy. Derek was more vocal than Khalil. But Khalil just brought that presence of that dominant presence, that fear into people because he was such a beast and he was so strong and he looked the part, but just sometimes he didn't act the part. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I by all means, not making that into a bad thing. I'm just saying that I don't believe that John Gruden thought that it would have the effect that it did. And it affected Bruce Irvin. It affected Derek Carr mentally as well. I know that Derek Carr had a job to do and he was learning this new system, but I think it kind of slowed down his progress as well. Amari Cooper, I'm not even exactly sure he was excited to be a Raider ever. And I'm not putting the guy down either, because he was a guy that he gave effort. It wasn't like he was a quitter or he didn't run good routes. I mean, the guy was an extremely good route runner. But sometimes when your heart's not fully in it, I just don't think he ever took it to that next level or had the energy that I've seen him have in Dallas. And that's, as frustrating as that is as a fan, it's just the way it is. And when John Gruden got the wind of that and knew that Amari Cooper he was unhappy, and he had the opportunity to trade him for another first round pick. Again, at the time, it would have been easy just to rail on John Gruden and just be like, dude, what are you doing, bro? Like, why are you getting rid of our best players? And I heard it all last year from just about everybody who didn't understand, like, Gruden lost it. And even the mainstream media was just ripping this guy. Like, he spent too much time away from the game. He doesn't know what he's doing. And my, oh my, how's the tide changed now, right? Like, everybody's like on Gruden's jock with Mike Mayock. That kind of rhyme is kind of cool, right? But it is true. But I think, remember, the Mike Mayock edition was, again, John Gruden. These guys had a relationship. They understood each other. their football philosophies ring the same. And that's what's going to actually make it, beyond that, beyond the fact that they have a great chemistry together, their philosophy of football is the same. That makes your job way easier. But you bring in a guy like Mike Mayock, who really studies players and has a knack of really breaking down their abilities and what kind of scheme they would fit in, what kind of personnel that they can run with, and that's going to help both Gunther and Gruden, because Gruden's a tape guy. We heard it when he picked up Antonio Brown. I mean, he's got like 400 clips of the guy on his computer already breaking down practically every play the guy's ever ran. So Gruden is the film dude when it comes to how it's going to fit his scheme, and Mike Mayock is that college dude that breaks down film and really looks at their physical abilities and how they will fit into what John is looking for, to what Gunther is looking for. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest changes in this team moving forward. Just read an article yesterday how the Raiders could possibly be the most improved team in the National Football League this year. And although I feel like it's really early to kind of make those type of predictions, I just think that they feel that the vibe, the chemistry between Mayock and Gruden, the additions that they made in really key spots are going to help this team excel this year. And at the moment, on paper, because that's all we're at, I agree. On paper, things are looking much, much better. I think that on paper, we have a great chance to be the most improved team in 2019, but it truly starts with Derek Carr. And that is still the most talked about topic, I think, moving forward when it comes to the Raiders at this point than any other top, even more than AB. Because when you start talking about AB, you automatically get to the point where you have to question Derek Carr. And everybody knows I've been a Derek Carr supporter since day one. I was a Derek Carr supporter before he was even drafted. Now those videos don't even exist on this channel anymore. And that was a decision I made 2.5, 3 years ago when the Will to Win actually kicked off. I got rid of all those videos, but I was rooting for Derek Carr even before he was drafted in the second round. And I even made a comment back in the day that there was a possibility that Reggie might jump up just to grab a guy like Derek Carr, which didn't happen. He fell to him in the second round, and it worked out the way it was supposed to be. Now, when Derek Carr was coming out of college, he had the same knock. His stress, he wasn't comfortable in the pocket. And that's what I hear most Raider fans and analysts talk about today is they talk about he releases the ball too quickly. He goes to his checkdowns too quickly. Which I'm not gonna even argue that statement because you watch the tape. I mean, he does. He tries to avoid the sack. Now, when it comes to last season, here's where all the excuses can start pouring in, right? And I made them before. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because I just want to get to the real point at hand because it's irrelevant anyway. But when you take in consideration, he lost his best friend because I believe him and Khalil Mack, they shared a special bond. That affected him. We go back even before that and we talk about the leg and back injury. And granted, that's going to be a factor as well. Anybody who doesn't want to take that into consideration is not thinking like a football player. They're thinking like a football coach. I mean, a football player is going to have these mental blocks when it comes. Every quarterback that I know that's gotten injured has had a little bit of timidness before they return to form. It takes a year or two. And again, it's another excuse, and I get that. But all these added up, especially Jon Gruden's system. Anybody who's old enough to be around on Jon Gruden's first stint here, it's an incredible offense he puts together, and the verbiage of it alone and all the movement that he uses, it takes a while to pick up on. And the only point that I like to point out, regardless of all the interceptions and how much he struggled at the beginning of the season, it was really how he finished. That's what I focus on. I focus on how he finished. And it really had a lot to do with that. I believe that guys like Colton Miller started playing at a higher level. I believe that Kelechi Osemele was not a fit in the zone blocking scheme that we're running now, and that's why he is no longer a Raider. It has nothing to do about KO not being a good football player because I think we know that's not the case. I mean, that guy was a beast when we had just your straight up block scheme. That guy was an animal. He just didn't fit the zone scheme, and that's just the unfortunate part. But I think they did a good job of replacing that in Trent Brown. I mean, this guy It's versatile, big dude, big dude. Jon Gruden likes big offensive linemen, big offensive, versatile offensive linemen, and Trent Brown fits that mold. And the crazy thing is, this guy's a seventh round pick himself. They invested a lot of money into him, and they should have. All in all, in a whole, I believe that what happened last year was just a growth spurt for a lot of the key players that are still on this team. It was an eye opener on some of the players that no longer need to be on this football team. And we see that. And whether it was luck, whether it was planned, the fact that we were able to get all these early round picks is going to be essential on how we change the dynamic of this football team moving forward. And that right there is what excites me the most. We can talk about Antonio Brown, Trent Brown, Tyrell Williams. We could talk about all these additions on the offensive side of the ball. We can even talk about the fact that we lost Jared Cook to the Saints, but we're not worried about it because Gruden had a plan. He knows the players on this roster now. He knew that Jared Cook was his best offensive weapon, but that wasn't by default, right? He was just the only one that was able to produce. He was a check down guy. I'm not saying that Jared Cook wasn't talented. I'm just saying that Gruden believes that he could plug another guy in there to do the same thing, younger and cheaper. And he stood his ground. Jon Gruden standing his ground. Jon Gruden knows what he wants. He's brought in Mike Mayock to get what he wants. And he's trusting Gunther into building the defense. And he's going to be building it with young people. I don't want to get into that today. I just want to get into what I saw last year in 2018 was your typical dysfunctional football team based off total scheme change, number one. A bunch of players that needed to be evaluated, number two. And number three, a team that was broken apart because they lost their true team leader. But I think that helps Derick Carr as well, because now Derick Carr is going to be that quarterback, the leader. There's no more Khalil Mack. Antonio Brown is going to be a bit of a diva. He's going to be very outspoken. We already see what he does on Instagram, but Derick Carr is going to be the guy that reels him in. Derick Carr is a leader that's going to bond, and we've seen Derick Carr do that. Derick Carr has that ability. We've seen it. We get the right players in the draft, and I believe we're going to have a very, very young defense, and that's going to probably be the biggest question mark moving forward. But it's too early to get into. That's why I'm real careful about what I say, because I don't want this show to be about a fan perspective. I really want to come at this with the truth, and that's why I don't like making excuses for Derick Carr. There is none. Make it or break it, baby. Your track record is not that great when it comes to wins and losses. And there's reasons for it, yes. Excuses, no. You have to step up, rise up, and be that quarterback that I personally believe that you are, because we've seen it. The guy has all the tools. We could talk about the 2016 season all we want. You know, it was good. He had a great offensive line. I think Jon Gruden and Mike Mayock both know that if Derick Carr is going to be great, they got to invest in that offensive line. And I believe that they have, and they're going to continue to do so, because it's going to be key on how this offense runs for a guy like Derick Carr. But if you do that, Derick Carr has shown he has the arm, the ability to make the throws. He even has that it factor, guys. Like, he has that fourth quarter comeback mentality. We've seen it. We saw it in 2016. We saw it a couple times last year. This guy can play the comeback role, and that's a huge asset to have in a quarterback. Not all quarterbacks have that. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in this football league. A lot of them get tossed around from team to team as gap fillers until they find another young guy to bring in, a la Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? And here's a guy that starts on so many different teams, and no one keeps him. Nobody keeps him. He's a good guy because he's not the guy. He's a good quarterback. He's a good gap filler, but he's not the guy. And that's what Derick Carr is going to be put to test with this year is, Derick, are you the guy? Are you the guy? Are you going to be Drew Brees, Tom Brady? Are you going to be that kind of quarterback? You don't even have to be that good per se, or an Eli Manning even, or even a Joe Flacco who's won a couple of Super Bowls. right? Are you going to be that type of player that gets the job done? Or are you going to be a good quarterback like Dan Marino was, or Matthew Stafford in Detroit, or even a Matt Ryan in Atlanta? Real good quarterbacks play really great, but can never win the big game. This is it, you know? This is it. And I'm not saying that we need to make the playoffs. I'm not saying that we need to win the Super Bowl, but this guy has to have a high-powered offense. He has to have the numbers, the points scored, and some wins under his belt this year that shows Jon Gruden that, oh yeah, it's on. So only time will tell. We have to let that play out. You know, the 2018 season was definitely an unfortunate one, probably one that a lot of us didn't expect because it was Jon Gruden, but come on, realistically, not too many coaches of Jon Gruden's caliber comes in and just can take you to the playoffs and run for a Super Bowl. I mean, we thought the talent was there, but remember, I think maybe there might have been a bit more of a chance to compete, but I don't even think. I mean, if you look at how way the San Diego they did it again, the way the Los Angeles Chargers played last season, and the way that the shitty Chiefs, I guess that word, Kansas City Chiefs played last season, I don't think so. I don't think so. You know, a lot of people talk about what if we would have had Mac? Well, you know, Mac made the Bears better. They became a playoff team, but there was so much more on that Bears defense besides Mac. That's exactly what Mac has always needed in his career is other pieces around him. And you saw that. But again, you kind of saw him fizzle out towards the end as well. He also missed some games due to injury, which is unlike him. And, you know, I'll never going to be the one to follow Khalil Mack for the rest of his career and base it off what ifs if he was a Raider. Because once he left, he's a Bear. And we're not the Bears. So we're not going to have the same players as the Bears do. I'll never play the what if game. It's done. I miss the guy. I think he was dynamic. I would love to have him on this football team, but at the same time, he's not. And I would say this would be the last time I talk about Khalil Mack, but that'd probably be a lie. I mean, it's going to come up. It's going to be something that follows this team for a while, and people are going to bring it up, and we're going to have to talk about it. It'll take some years before we really get over Khalil Mack. Number one, it'd help if Arden Key stepped up, or maybe if we draft a Josh Allen, or maybe we get lucky enough to get Bosa or someone to kind of help us forget about the ability that Khalil Mack had as a pass rusher. But again, apples to oranges, apples to oranges. And as we move forward, we have to focus on what we have now. And what I see Mayock, Gruden, and Gunther attempting to do, because again, this is all paper at this point. But what I see them attempting to do, there's room for optimism. And we fall into that trap every year. I've said it a million times, and here it comes again. What happens when optimism meets reality? That's the true question. The true question for the 2019 season is, what happens when optimism meets reality? And we're a long ways away from that. We're still considerably a little bit of ways away from the draft. There's still some free agent moves that may and need to be made. Are they going to try to set the idea here? And I remember reading something about this as well, where they were talking about when you have to make so many big moves in free agency, it means that you're trying to win now. Well, we had a lot of money and we had a lot of holes, and we needed to spend money and we needed to fill some holes. And if you look about what they did, there's some moves that really make sense. And then there's other ones that, that you could tell that they're just gaps. Vontez Perfect is a perfect example of that. Vontez Perfect is a gap player. 1 year deal. $5 million, I believe, is a good price point. But if they really believed he was the answer, like when you hear the real true diehard Vontaze perfect supporters, you would think that this guy is the answer long term. If he was the answer long term, we wouldn't give him a 1-year deal. We would at least give him a 3-year deal, like we did some of these other players. Paid him up front, had some options a couple years down the road, and move on. No, we just a 1-year deal, and it's not even guaranteed. So it's not like he's he is the type of player that has the ability. As long as he's healthy, he's going to make this team. Fact. How he plays and how long he plays will determine. And when I mean how he plays, I mean the guy will bring it. But if he's going to be a dirty player, continue to be a dirty player, and continue to put us in bad situations, he won't make it after this year. So there you go. That's one point. The other point is his injury history. If he shows once again he can't play a full 16-game season, he's gone. 1-year deal. The ultimate gap player. The guy that you're going to have on this roster to either help with Kumbinda, Marquez Lee, maybe a future draft pick, and then you're done. But look at the situation that Mayock put him in. It's a prove-it deal. You can get a lot out of a player when they're only on a 1-year contract. Make it or break it, baby. What are you going to do with it? 1 year. You got one shot to reinvent yourself. Or you're probably going to retire because no team is going to pick up. And even if they pick you up, you're going to still be another gap somewhere else. Another 1-year deal. It's not even going to be $5 million at that point. You're going to be damaged goods. In my opinion, he is already damaged goods. In my last video, I talked about how smart it was to be, and I still stand by that. I believe if used correctly for the purpose of re-energizing this defense, teaching our young players how Gunther likes to run his system, he definitely brings a sense of toughness on how he plays the game, minus the dirty stuff. So, in my opinion, yeah, I still stand by the pickup. I like it. I like the pickup for what I believe it is. And I know that's what it is, because if it was anything more than that, it would have been more than a 1-year, $5 million deal, period. So that's what I have to say about Vontaze Perfect anyway. I wanted to reiterate my stance on that and make it clear that I believe it is what it is, and it's a great pickup for what it is. But don't get too excited about it, because if it was going to be that, it would have been paid out already. And I'm excited to see how he approaches it. Is he going to just take the money and retire, or does he really want a future, not only with the Raiders, but just an NFL future in general? We'll have to wait and see. I'm excited to see how that plays out. So it is an interesting story. It's something to keep an eye on. You know, we got some new safeties in the house. We got another corner in the house. We got new wide receivers. I'm waiting to see where the running back game develops, because, you know, I think everybody's waiting on Marshawn Lynch, and whether the Raiders are or not, if that's in Gruden's plan still or not, I'll take Lynch for the same reason I'll take Perfect, because the guy plays hard. He brings an energy to the team that I believe is much needed. I mean, if you were to put Marshawn Lynch in the backfield and Antonio Brown on the outside, both their guys' energy, their playmaking ability, I think it would help and it'll go a long ways. But I'm afraid that at Marshawn's age and his injury last year, how durable is he really going to be moving forward? Which, again, if Chris Warren pans out, maybe not be a big deal. I don't know. Or should we just go ahead and invest in Doug Martin, Chris Warren, Jalen? We have options there. I'm just curious of how that's really going to line up and what that really is going to look like as we move forward. But again, this is all part of the game, all part of, like, this is why we do these shows, man, so we could talk about it step by step, and we'll figure it out as we go along. But I think that's going to be my time for today. I notice I start off slow and I start to feel stronger, and I could probably talk for hours, but I really got to try to hone it in, use time management, and I'm just trying to get my flow back, guys. And I really want to get it into a Raider radio style flow. Things are lining up just exactly the way I want them to so far, as far as equipment, the things I've been able to put together this weekend with my IT guy. Um, Man, it was a blessing. This just a total blessing this Saturday. The things I was able to learn, the things I was able to hook up on this computer. I'm really, really excited about what this is going to look like moving forward. Just waiting on a few more details, a few more things to drop, and then we start the pilot episodes and see how we get into flow of working this new switchboard and putting the actual show together. Because I'm going to be doing it podcast style, but it's going to be recorded live. And so when I upload the podcast, it's not going to be edited. It's going to be recorded live right here on YouTube, and then the live broadcast of the podcast will be straight uploaded to all the sites. So it's going to be a little different. A lot of podcasts are run where you record different tracks, you go back in and you edit what you want to add to certain spots, whether it's music, cut this part out, cut that part out. I'm not going to do it that way. I'm straight going to run the podcast live here, so you could tune in live and be a part of the show, or you can catch it at a different time, either here on YouTube, if that's your preference to follow the stuff on YouTube, or you could pick it up as a podcast. That's the idea. That's my vision. That's what I'm headed for. That's what I'm excited about. So I will see you guys soon. We'll see what happens today with the Raider news. I know I wanted to touch base on this real quick. I just got caught up in talking about everything else. We picked up Mike Glennon, and I wanted to throw that in about the Derick Carr stuff because once again, that proves Carr's not going nowhere. He's not going nowhere. So, I mean, it's either, I mean, for those who don't believe in him, I don't even knock you for it really at this point. I mean, if you don't want to see the logic behind it, that's fine. That's your right. That's your opinion. And, one of us are going to be right. One of us is going to be wrong. And I just don't want to find myself rooting against the guy because I do believe in him. So, Mike Glennon fits the bill of what would be his replacement as far as backup goes. So it's Derick Carr. I mean, if you were going to get Kyler Murray, you wouldn't get Mike Glennon. I'm just saying that. So it looks like he's going to Arizona anyway, so it's irrelevant. But again, we picked up Mike Glennon. I think it's a solid pickup. With incentives, he'll be about making what AJ McCarron would have, but that's not guaranteed money. That's in options. Like he'd have to get into a starting role to make that money. So, hopefully Carr stays healthy. He picks up Gruden's system and he excels. But like again, we'll wait and see if optimism meets reality. All right, Raider Nation. Until next time, this is Jason Smith, aka The Knight, and you stay Raider strong.